They told you success would look obvious. More headlines, more radio, more approval, more of the industry pointing at one person and saying, that one matters most. So by that logic, Louis Tomlinson should feel smaller by now, and yet he doesn't. Because Louis may have reached a point the music industry struggles to control. The point where an artist's career no longer depends on being constantly chosen by the machine. Not because he became the biggest name in the room, but because he built something that keeps working, even when mainstream permission gets quieter. Chapter 1. The Game. Everyone thought he lost. For years, Louis was judged by the wrong scoreboard. People looked at post-One Direction solo careers and assumed the only meaningful win was the loudest one, the most visible one, the one with the cleanest media narrative and the strongest industry push. And by that standard, Louis was easy to underestimate, because his path never looked like the obvious coronation story.
I thought for me, it was the band or nothing. It was hard for me to imagine myself on my own. I didn't see a way back, not even musically, just to do anything.
In fact, Louis himself has admitted that the period after One Direction was frightening. In a 2026 interview, he said history shows there are usually only one or two people from a band who really prosper solo, and he openly said he never imagined he would be one of that group.
I was obviously very aware of previously there might be one or two people from a band that kind of prosper, but history says there's not normally often more than two, really. And that was really scary, because I was never going to put myself in that group of two, ever.
And that is exactly why what happened next matters. That matters because it shows the fear was real. He understood the structure. He understood the odds. He knew exactly how the public usually reads these stories. So no, this was never a story about Louis assuming he would automatically inherit the spotlight. It was the opposite. He knew the system usually picks its favorites. He just kept building anyway.
This week, my fans have been working incredibly hard. It doesn't go unnoticed. Yeah, I'm just incredibly grateful.
Chapter 2. The numbers that prove he didn't disappear. Because if Louis had truly faded, the results would not look like this. Faith in the Future gave him his first solo UK #1 album in 2022. Then in 2026, How Did I Get Here became his second solo UK #1. Official charts reported that How Did I Get Here topped that week's Vinyl Albums chart, and Louis explicitly credited the passion and dedication of the fans for making it possible.
Do you have any, words for your fans here in the tri-state?
Yeah, I'd just say a general thank you, really. The support has been incredible for years and years. And if you're an old fan or a new fan, I just want to just say thank you for all the support.
So if the numbers say he stayed standing, the next question is obvious. What actually changed? That is not the profile of an artist who vanished because the mainstream conversation got quieter. That is the profile of an artist whose support base still converts belief into real outcomes. And that is the key distinction. Some careers depend on constant mass visibility. Others depend on loyalty deep enough to move product, fill rooms, and sustain momentum even when the noise level drops. Louis' chart history proves he belongs in the second category.
And they'll say I told you so. Come on when you know it's only for the praise.
Chapter 3. Touring changed his center of gravity. One answer is confidence. In Billboard's 2026 interview, Louis was asked why this album rollout felt different, and he answered that the confidence he had built up from touring changed things.
To write this kind of record, I feel like to write the record that I deserve to make, I feel like I had to come from a more confident point of view. I've definitely been hard on myself in the past, and that affects the creation as well. So
Billboard's coverage also frames him as visibly more comfortable in this era, and once confidence stops coming from permission, the career starts to look different. That may sound simple, but it changes everything. Because when an artist is still seeking external validation, every release feels like a test. But when confidence has been built in front of real crowds, over real time, the dynamic shifts. Now the work is not trying to prove you belong. Now the work comes from knowing you already survived the part that was supposed to break you. That is why this matters so much for Louis. Touring did not just keep him visible, it rebuilt his self-belief from the ground up. That is an inference, but it is supported by his own description of touring as the source of that newfound confidence. Chapter 4. He didn't just keep going, he started curating his own world. This is where Louis becomes more than just a solo artist trying to stay afloat. He starts to look like someone building his own ecosystem. The clearest example is Away From Home Festival. Brewery Omegang's event page says the festival began in London in 2021, then expanded through Spain, Italy, Mexico, and in 2025 to Cooperstown, New York. The page describes it as a global celebration of live music curated by Louis Tomlinson and notes 4 previous sold-out editions before the US expansion. Billboard also reported on the 2025 US edition. That matters. And maybe autonomy matters this much to Louis because he knows what the opposite feels like. Because curating a festival is not the same thing as waiting to be booked into someone else's narrative. It means setting the tone yourself, choosing the atmosphere yourself, building a space where your taste, your audience, and your identity as an artist shape the experience. That does not mean Louis has escaped the industry entirely. It means he has clearly carved out a lane where his value is no longer limited to whether a larger machine decides to center him. He is not just performing in the ecosystem, he is designing it.
When you do a job that is so extraordinary, and literally you spend your whole child life being told that these things are unattainable, then when you get them as a young lad, of course you're left with a feeling of imposter syndrome. Of course, because, you know, it's something that you never imagined in your head.
Chapter 5. Once you've been dehumanized by fame, you stop worshiping it. One of the most revealing things Louis has said in recent years came in his 2025 interview with the independent media. Reflecting on One Direction era fame, he said the hardest part was being young, extremely famous, and unable to move through ordinary life normally. He described even basic moments like trying to get a coffee while walking with security as dehumanizing. Chapter 6. The fanbase isn't a side note. It's the infrastructure. This may be the most important chapter of all, because Louis has practically said it himself, the fan relationship is not cosmetic. Official charts quoted him thanking the passion and dedication of the fans for making his 2026 #1 possible. That line matters because it connects the emotional story to a material result. The fans are not just there to cheer, they are part of the mechanism that keeps the career moving, and that is why Louis' power can look strange from the outside. If you only understand power as mainstream saturation, you will miss what is happening. But if you understand power as durability, trust, repeat support, and the ability to keep generating wins without total institutional backing, then Louis is a lot stronger than the old narrative allowed. This is not the power of being endlessly chosen. It is the power of no longer collapsing when you are not. So no, Louis Tomlinson's real power is not that he became the loudest star in the room. It is that he built a career that can still move without begging to be reapproved every season. He has official chart proof that the support is real. He has his own words showing how touring rebuilt his confidence. He has a festival that proves he is not just participating in the system, but shaping his own lane inside it. And he has lived through a level of fame so intense that he now knows exactly what kind of success he does not want to worship anymore. That is why Louis feels powerful now, not because he needs their permission, but because he learned how to keep building without waiting for it.